going to hazard a guess that nearly everybody in this room has at some point had a marvelous creative idea that you haven't shared with anybody else. And I'm prepared to guess that the reason you didn't share your idea was because you were embarrassed. The fear of being laughed at, judged, or looking silly caused you to keep your idea very firmly to yourself. Now, our creative ideas really are the worst for causing sweaty palms and an increased heart rate when the prospect of sharing them arises. Our creative ideas are often very personal, they require a bit of soul-bearing, and that makes us feel vulnerable. And I don't know about you, but I don't particularly enjoy feeling vulnerable. Add to that, society tells us lots of things about what it means to be a creative person. Creative people are a bit eccentric. Maybe creative people are all starving artists. Maybe, there are a few here. Maybe creative people are just a bit weird. And we don't really like to be associated with weird. And the funny thing is that when we're very small, our creativity is encouraged with great enthusiasm. Small children are given glitter to throw like confetti. Parents will stand by and watch as Play-Doh is smushed into expensive carpets, and go to any home that houses small humans, and you're very likely to be greeted by fridges festooned with gorgeous, colorful pictures of stickmen doing fun things like skydiving and shopping. However, the older we get, the less our creativity is encouraged. Creative careers are perceived to be more risky, and so we very lovingly steer our children in the direction of more financially stable and reliable careers like engineering and accounting. The artwork comes off the fridge, and we grow up, and we lose our innate ability to create purely for the joy of creating. Now, thankfully, this didn't happen to me, although my mum still doesn't have stickmen pictures on her fridge. However, it's taken me over a decade and a half of being a full-time creative weirdo to really understand the power that creativity wields. I'm a professional photographer, and I spend the majority of my time photographing dogs. I love dogs, I think they're brilliant, and I'm particularly passionate about underdogs. And the majority of the personal work that I make features the greatest underdog of all, the rescue dog. And I'm very passionate about encouraging people to adopt rescue dogs, and that is a message that I'm always looking to share with the work I make. Now, in case you were wondering, I do like to walk the talk, and as well as filling my portfolio with rescue dogs, I've also filled my house with them. These are just two of the many dogs that share my home. This is Edward and Victoria, also known as the twins. And they've been with me since they were 2 days old. They're now 3. They're still treated like babies. Yes, I'm one of those people that treats my dogs like children. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the term black dog syndrome. This is a worldwide phenomenon that essentially refers to the problem of rehoming black dogs once they end up at a shelter. One black dog looks very much like another. They can be perceived to be more aggressive, and they don't photograph well, which in the Instagram-obsessed world we live in is a problem of catastrophic proportions. And consequently, black dogs that find themselves at a shelter are the least likely to be adopted and the most likely to be put to sleep. Now, of course, this seemed like an excellent topic for my inner animal activist to tackle, so I decided to come up with a photography series that could educate people about black dog syndrome and also, of course, encourage people to adopt. And I very imaginatively named it the Black Series. To start putting this project together, I started photographing adopted black rescue dogs one by one to highlight that despite popular opinion, they all look very different. There's nothing scary about them, and they do in fact photograph beautifully. And to really accentuate each dog's individuality, I decided to caption each of the dog's portraits as if they were being described before their profile was uploaded to Tinder. The captions went something like this. Casper likes the finer things in life, insists on silk sheets, and has a secret penchant for wearing feather boas. Truffle, part of an oopsie litter, but insists he's full pedigree. He still thinks this shoot was for Country Life magazine. Please nobody tell him otherwise. And Guinness, judgmental as all hell, found living under a trailer, but is in no way trashy. Now, black dog syndrome is a very serious issue, but I knew that in order to get people to sit up and take notice of it, I'd have to present it in an original way. Hence the captions and the black dogs against a black backdrop, which in theory sounds completely ridiculous, but it works quite well in practice. And I also very specifically photographed just the dogs' faces. I wanted people looking at the images to engage with the dogs as individuals, and I wanted people looking at the pictures to be able to relate to the dogs in a similar sort of way that you might relate to a portrait of a person. So, with that in mind, allow me to introduce you to a few more of my dog people. This is Fior. He is a highbrow writer. He only spends time with other intellectuals, and he's a master bridge player. This is Ollie. He's an ex-stockbroker. He earned his millions in the dot-com boom and now spends 6 months of the year on his yacht in Monaco. And here's Henry. He's an enormous introvert. He loves football, but he has no idea about the rules. He simply cheers for the winning team. Now, making a series of work like this and sharing it are two very different things. And I felt enormous inner conflict before I put this work out anywhere. I'd been planning to post it onto Board Panda, which, for those of you that don't know, is an international creative community that gets a lot of internet traffic. So on the one hand, I was really excited about sharing the work and getting the message about black dog syndrome out to an enormous audience. And on the other hand, I was really worried that, like the previous 5 projects I'd posted onto Board Panda, it would be ignored, and I'd be left feeling disappointed, rejected, and like a complete failure. Add to that, I'm not a writer, but yet the Black series really does rely on the captions to put it into the context I'd created for it, and I was terrified that people would read through it and just think, goodness gracious, this woman is clearly not a writer, and I would just look completely stupid. But what really pushed me into sending this work out into the world was the fact that I had an important message to share, and that that message had the potential to be life-saving for black shelter dogs. So I unleashed the black dogs and I let them out into cyberspace. And as it happens, I needn't have worried, because the Black series very quickly went viral. And far from being laughed at, the Board Panda readers were laughing, and more importantly, they were sharing. By allowing my imagination to run riot with dogs wearing feather boas and other absurd adventures, I even sent one of them on an MI5 mission, I invited other people to join in the fun. And the comments under each of the images were filled with witty additions to the stories that I had started. People were sharing pictures of their own black rescue dogs. And best of all, there were pledges from people to adopt dogs who knew nothing about black dog syndrome prior to seeing my work. Now, the sad reality is that every single dog here represents at least another 100 black dogs that didn't make it out of a shelter. But I knew that leading from the heaviness of that angle would have made the project fall flat, and I think it would have been largely ignored. And I believe the success of the project is down to the combination of the images and captions together. I don't think the images on their own would have had the impact either. And I poured my heart and soul into writing these captions. You may have gathered I've got a slightly childish sense of humor, but it is generally only reserved for close family and friends. I'm British. I like to keep my crazy quite safely tucked away. But in allowing the captions to be authentic, it was actually what caused the success of the project, and it taught me a very valuable lesson about authenticity. And it got me thinking, how many other creative messages and ideas are we missing out on because the people who have them are too afraid to share them? And these creative ideas end up being like our black dogs, unwanted, ignored, dismissed, and gone in the blink of an eye. The Black series has been life-changing for me. It's had over 100,000 views on Board Panda. It's been shared on social media and websites across the world. It even bagged me a feature on the Daily Mail's Mail Online site in the UK, possibly the pinnacle of my career so far, apart from today. It's opened up opportunities for me, and it's the reason I'm standing here on stage talking to you. Despite the messages we may have received about creativity growing up, it isn't a frivolous pursuit. Creativity has the power to connect us as humans and to cause positive change in the world. The Black series is testimony to that. So, I challenge you to find a way to connect with your creativity. Dust off your paintbrushes, revisit the idea for that novel, start writing again about what lights you up, dig out the ballet shoes, get the piano out of storage. Magic happens when we allow our creativity some time off the leash, and I think we could all do with a little bit more magic in our lives. Thank you.